They say you can't choose your family, but you can certainly choose who you leave behind at an airport gate. I'm an old woman who worked 50 years to build a legacy for my children. I thought my daughter loved me. I thought my granddaughter respected me. But as I stood at the check-in counter with my suitcases packed, watching my own flesh and blood board a first-class flight with my life savings in their pockets, I realized I wasn't their mother anymore. I was just their ATM. They thought they'd left me with nothing but a broken heart. What they didn't know was that my simple son-in-law was about to pull the rug out from under their perfect, greedy world. Sit down, honey. Grab a tea. This is the story of how the invisible daughter and a quiet man proved that the truth always finds its way home, even when you try to fly away from it. You know, they say a house is built of bricks and beams. But looking back at my childhood home, it felt more like it was built of cold marble and high expectations. My daughter, Sarah, and her husband, Mark, didn't just raise children. They curated them. Or at least, they tried to curate one of them. My granddaughter Anna was always the quiet one. She was like a soft breeze in a house that only respected thunderstorms. While her sister, Chloe, was out there collecting gold medals and plastic trophies, Anna was tucked away in the corner with a sketchbook. I remember the hallway in that house so clearly. It was a gallery of Chloe's greatness. Every wall was covered in her achievements. There were photos of her at the finish line. There were certificates for the debate team. It was a shrine to the golden child. Sarah used to walk past those photos and beam with pride. She'd say, "Our Chloe is going to change the world." But then there was Anna. My sweet, invisible Anna. Her room was at the very end of the hall, where the light didn't quite reach. There were no trophies for being kind. There were no medals for being a good listener. To her parents, Anna was just there. She was the background noise to Chloe's symphony. As they grew up, the gap only got wider. Chloe became a high-powered consultant, always talking about deliverables and market shares. She wore suits that cost more than my first car. Anna, bless her heart, chose a different path. She became a freelance editor. She worked from her little laptop in her pajamas, tucked away in her small apartment. Sarah and Mark couldn't understand it. They looked at Anna's quiet life and saw a failure. They didn't see the peace she had found. They only saw that she wasn't achieving on their terms. At family dinners, they would spend 40 minutes talking about Chloe's latest promotion. Then they'd turn to Anna and ask, "So, are you still doing that little typing job?" It broke my heart. It truly did. Because I was the only one who really saw her. When the house got too loud with Chloe's ego, Anna would come find me in the garden. We'd sit on the porch swing, and she'd tell me about the books she was reading. She'd tell me about the stories she was helping people tell. I was her harbor. And she was my joy. In a family that was obsessed with being the best, she was the only one who cared about being good. But even then, in those quiet moments on the porch, I could see the shadows in her eyes. She knew she was the invisible daughter. She knew she was only tolerated, not celebrated. I suppose that's why I didn't see the storm coming. I was so focused on keeping her warm that I didn't notice how cold the rest of the family had become. We were living in a house of cards, built on Chloe's vanity. And we were all about to find out just how quickly a house like that can fall down. Then came the day Anna brought Liam home to meet the family. I remember it was a Sunday. The air was thick with the scent of my pot roast and Sarah's nervous energy. Sarah had spent the whole morning straightening the photos on the wall of Chloe. She wanted everything to look perfect. Not for Anna, mind you. But because she expected Anna's new boyfriend to be a reflection of their status. When Liam walked through the door, the air just seemed to go out of the room. He wasn't wearing a three-piece suit. He wasn't driving a German sports car. He was just a man in a clean flannel shirt and well-worn jeans. He had a smile that reached his eyes and a handshake that felt like he actually meant it. I liked him instantly. He looked me right in the eye and said, "It's an honor to meet the heart of this family, Mrs. Miller." But Sarah and Mark? They looked at him like he was a smudge on their expensive rug. During dinner, the interrogation began. Mark leaned back, swirling his wine, and asked, "So, Liam, what is it you do exactly?" Anna mentioned something about tech. Liam just nodded humbly. He said, "I work with computers, sir. Mostly troubleshooting and infrastructure." You could almost hear Mark's interest hit the floor. "Troubleshooting," he repeated. "So, like a repairman? You fix laptops?" Liam just gave a small, polite smile. "Something like that," he replied. He didn't brag. He didn't pull out a fancy business card. He just sat there, enjoying his potatoes. The rest of the night was painful to watch. Sarah kept trying to pivot the conversation back to Chloe's fiancé, who was a junior partner at a law firm. She'd say, "It's so important for a man to have drive, don't you think? To have a real career trajectory?" She said it while looking right past Liam, as if he were a ghost. They mistook his quietness for a lack of wit. They mistook his humility for a lack of ambition. To them, if you weren't shouting about your success, you didn't have any. They saw a simple a man for their simple daughter. Later that night, I overheard Mark in the kitchen. He told Sarah, "Well, at least he's polite." But honestly, Anna could have done better than a glorified IT guy. It made my blood boil. They didn't see the way Liam looked at Anna. They didn't see how he pulled out her chair or how he listened when she spoke. They were so blinded by the glitter of Chloe's world that they couldn't see the solid gold standing right in front of them. Liam wasn't underwhelming. He was just comfortable in his own skin. And in that house, being comfortable was a sin they couldn't forgive. They thought they had him all figured out. But oh, they didn't have a clue. Not a single clue. It wasn't long after that dinner when the wedding fever took hold of the house. Chloe had finally gotten her engagement ring. It was a diamond so big it looked like it made her hand heavy. And with that ring came a list of demands that grew longer every single day. I remember sitting in the kitchen while Sarah and Chloe spread out the bridal magazines. It looked like a war room. They weren't just planning a ceremony. They were planning a coronation. Chloe wanted the designer gown. She wanted the 5-star ballroom. She wanted imported lilies that had to be flown in on a refrigerated plane. Sarah just kept nodding and writing checks. "Nothing is too good for our golden girl," she'd say. "This is going to be a real wedding. The kind people talk about for years." She said that last part with a sharp look toward Anna. It was a cruel jab. It was a way of saying that whatever Anna and Liam eventually did would be second best. But I started noticing things. Small things that didn't sit right with me. I saw Mark staring at his bank statements late at night. His face looked gray in the light of the desk lamp. I noticed they stopped ordering the expensive wine they liked. Sarah even suggested we skip our annual family brunch to save time. But I knew it was about the money. The greed was like a fog in the house. Chloe didn't care about the cost. She wanted a horse-drawn carriage. She wanted a 10-tier cake with edible gold leaf. Whenever Anna tried to suggest something sensible, Chloe would just huff. "You wouldn't understand, Anna," she'd say. "Some of us actually have a standard to maintain." The parents were drowning. I could see the panic in the way Mark tapped his fingers on the table. But their pride was even bigger than their debt. They had spent years telling the world how successful they were. They couldn't stop now. They had to keep up the act. Even if it meant emptying every account they had. They started talking about family sacrifices. That's a dangerous phrase in a house like that. It usually means someone is about to get hurt. Sarah would look at me and then look at the house. She'd talk about how much equity was tied up in the walls. I didn't realize then that I was the one they were looking at. I was the sacrifice they were planning. They were so desperate to give Chloe her dream that they started looking for any pile of money they could find. And they knew I had my late husband's savings tucked away. They called it the legacy fund. I called it my peace of mind. But to them, it was just another check to pay for Chloe's champagne fountain. The real wedding mantra became a drumbeat. It drowned out common sense. It drowned out kindness. And pretty soon, it was going to drown out the last bit of loyalty this family had left. The day of the big family trip finally arrived. I had been packed for a week. I had my best floral dress pressed and my walking shoes ready. Sarah had told me months ago that this was a pre-wedding celebration. A grand trip to the coast for the whole family. Even Liam was invited. I felt like a young girl again, thinking about the ocean air and the sound of the waves. We arrived at the airport in a flurry of activity. The terminal was echoing with the sound of rolling suitcases and frantic travelers. Mark was leading the way like a general. Chloe was checking her reflection in every glass window we passed. She was talking loudly about the first-class lounge and the champagne waiting for her. I stayed close to Anna and Liam. They were the ones carrying my heavy bags. They were the ones making sure I didn't trip in the crowd. Anna kept squeezing my hand. She told me, "You're going to love the view, Grandma." I believed her. I truly did. We got to the check-in counter. Mark stepped forward with a stack of passports. I reached into my purse to hand him mine, but he didn't look back. He was talking to the agent in a hushed, hurried voice. There was a lot of clicking on the keyboard. Then the agent looked up with a confused frown. "I only see 5 tickets confirmed, sir," the agent said. Her voice was flat, but it rang in my ears like a bell. Mark didn't even flinch. He just nodded. He said, "Yes, that's correct." 5. My heart did a strange little skip. I counted in my head. Mark, Sarah, Chloe, her fiancé, and Anna. That was 5. I stepped forward, my voice trembling just a little. I asked, "Mark, dear, what about my ticket? And Liam's?" The silence that followed was the coldest thing I've ever felt. Sarah wouldn't look at me. She was suddenly very busy adjusting her scarf. Mark turned around, and his eyes were like flint. He said, "Mom, there was a mistake with the booking. The prices jumped. We had to make a choice to keep the bridal suite for Chloe." I looked at him, waiting for the punchline. Waiting for him to say he was joking. But he wasn't. Chloe just rolled her eyes and checked her watch. "It's just a trip, Grandma," she said. "You're better off at home anyway. All that walking would have been hard on your hips." It wasn't a mistake. It wasn't a computer error. It was a choice. They had used my legacy fund to pay for their luxury, and then they didn't even buy me a seat on the plane. They stood there in their expensive clothes, ready to fly away on my money, leaving me standing in a drafty terminal with my suitcases. I looked at Anna. Her face was as white as a sheet. She looked at her parents like she was seeing monsters for the first time. Liam stepped up beside me. He put a firm, warm hand on my shoulder. He didn't say a word to them. He just looked at Mark with a look that would have withered a stone. "Let's go, Mom," Sarah said, finally looking at her watch. "The gate is closing." They turned their backs on us. They walked toward the security line without a single goodbye or "I'm sorry." I watched my own daughter walk away, leaving her mother behind like a piece of forgotten luggage. The heartbreak didn't come all at once. It was a slow, chilling realization. I wasn't their family. I was just their bank. And the bank was officially closed. The ride home from the airport was the quietest hour of my life. Liam drove with both hands on the wheel. He looked straight ahead with a jaw set like granite. Anna sat in the back with me. She held my hand so tight I thought she might never let go. We didn't go back to the big, cold house. No, Liam took us straight to their little apartment. It smelled like cedar and fresh coffee. It felt like a sanctuary. For the first few days, I just sat by their window. I watched the birds and wondered where I had gone wrong. But Anna and Liam weren't sitting idle. They were moving like a whirlwind. Liam was always on his phone in the other room. He was speaking in a low, serious voice I'd never heard before. And Anna. She was at the kitchen table with a mountain of paperwork. She had called in every favor she had. She spent hours on the phone with the bank. She was digging through the digital files of my late husband's estate. I told her, "Honey, it's all right. It's just money." But she looked at me with a fire in her eyes that reminded me of my own mother. She said, "No, Grandma. This isn't just money. This is your life." And they had no right to steal it. One afternoon, the sun was hitting the table just right. Anna let out a gasp that made me drop my knitting. She had found it. The paper trail. It wasn't just a few missing dollars here and there. It was a systematic draining of my accounts. She showed me the screen. There were signatures that looked like mine, but they weren't quite right. My own son-in-law, Mark, had been moving funds for months. He had set up a secondary account for wedding expenses. My retirement was paying for Chloe's crystal centerpieces. My emergency fund was paying for a designer veil. The worst part was the date on the final transfer. It happened the day before the airport. They had taken the last of my liquid savings to upgrade their own seats to first class. They knew I wouldn't be able to board that plane. They knew because they had spent the ticket money on extra luggage for Chloe's gowns. Liam walked into the kitchen then. He looked at the documents Anna had printed out. He didn't look surprised. He just looked disappointed. He leaned down and kissed the top of Anna's head. Then he looked at me. He said, "They think they've been clever, Grandma. They think because they're high achievers that they can outsmart a quiet girl and an IT guy." He tapped a folder he was carrying. "But they forgot one thing," he said. "They forgot that I've spent my whole career tracking down bugs in the system." "And your family?" "They're the biggest bug I've ever found." I felt a chill go down my spine. Not of fear, but of anticipation. For years, I had let them walk over me to keep the peace. I had let them treat Anna like a shadow. But as I looked at the paper trail of betrayal on that kitchen table, I realized something. The peace was already broken. Now, it was time for the truth. And with Anna and Liam by my side, I knew the truth was going to have a very loud voice. That evening, the air in the apartment felt different. It was thick with a secret that was about to burst. Anna was still staring at those bank records with a heavy heart. She looked at Liam and sighed. She told him, "Liam, we need a lawyer. But I don't know how we can afford a good one. Not with what they've done to Grandma's accounts." Liam sat down across from her. He took her hands in his. He had that same calm, steady look he always had. But there was a new spark in his eyes. He said, "Anna, I think it's time I told you exactly what a troubleshooting means in my world." He reached into his bag and pulled out a laptop. It didn't look like much. But when he opened it, the screen was filled with data I couldn't begin to understand. He started explaining things. He didn't just fix laptops for neighbors. He owned the firm that managed the cybersecurity for half the banks in the state. My jaw nearly hit the floor. This boy we thought was just a humble repairman was the founder of one of the fastest-growing tech companies in the country. He hadn't been hiding it to be deceptive. He just didn't think his bank balance was the most interesting thing about him. He wanted Anna to love him for who he was, not for what he owned. Anna was speechless. She looked at him like he was a stranger, and then she started to laugh. It was a beautiful, relieved sound. Liam smiled and said, "I've already had my legal team look at everything. We don't just have a case. We have a mountain of evidence." But then he did something clever. He didn't want to just call the police. He wanted them to feel the weight of what they'd done. He said, "They think they're coming home to a celebration. They think they got away with the perfect heist. Let's let them keep thinking that for a few more days." He called it a consequence trap. It sounded like something out of a movie. While Sarah, Mark, and Chloe were sipping drinks on the beach, Liam's team was working behind the scenes. They were freezing accounts. They were gathering every forged signature. They were preparing a homecoming that my family would never forget. I felt a little spark of mischief in my old heart. For years, I had been the one keeping the peace. But peace without justice is just a lie you tell yourself. We spent the rest of the night planning. We weren't going to yell. We weren't going to scream. We were going to be waiting at that airport. We were going to meet them right where they left us. Only this time, the power wouldn't be in Mark's hands. It wouldn't be in Chloe's demands. It would be right there in that little folder Liam held. I went to sleep that night feeling lighter than I had in years. The trap was set. And the invisible daughter was finally about to be seen. The airport terminal felt different this time. It didn't feel like a place of abandonment anymore. It felt like a courtroom. We stood right by the international arrivals gate. Liam was on my left, looking calm and steady in a sharp charcoal suit I'd never seen him wear. Anna was on my right, holding a manila folder like it was a shield. Next to Liam stood a tall woman with silver hair and a briefcase that looked like it meant business. She was the head of Liam's legal department. Then, the doors slid open. I saw them. Mark was leading the pack, looking tanned and smug. Sarah was draped in new silk scarves. And Chloe was trailing behind, complaining about the flight and checking her reflection in her phone. They were laughing. They looked like people who didn't have a care in the world. They walked right toward us. For a second, Mark's face went blank. Then he put on that fake, booming smile he uses for business. He said, "Well, look at this." Did you come to give us a hero's welcome? I told you she couldn't stay mad at us, Sarah. Chloe didn't even stop walking. She just waved a hand and said, "Grab the blue bags first, Anna. My back is killing me." That's when I stepped forward. My knees were shaking just a little bit. But my voice? My voice was as steady as a mountain stream. I said, "Stop right there, Mark. Don't you take another step." The laughter died instantly. Sarah looked at me with her mouth open. She said, "Mom, don't make a scene. We're tired. We can talk about the ticket mix-up at home." I looked her right in the eye. I said, "There will be no talking at home. Because I am not going back to that house. And neither are you, until you explain why my signatures are on documents I never signed." Mark's face turned a nasty shade of gray. He tried to laugh it off. He said, "Mom, you're confused. You're getting older. You probably just forgot signing those authorizations for the wedding." That was when the silver-haired woman stepped forward. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't have to. She handed Mark a document. She said, "Mr. Miller, my name is Eleanor Vance. I represent Mrs. Miller and her interests. These are copies of the forensic audit we completed while you were enjoying your vacation. We've already filed the injunctions." The silence in that terminal was deafening. People were walking past us, but it felt like we were in a bubble of ice. Chloe started to whine. She said, "What is happening? Who is this woman? Anna, tell your boyfriend to get us a taxi." I looked at my granddaughter, Chloe. The one I had pampered and praised. I said, "Liam isn't getting you anything, Chloe. From now on, you're going to have to learn the value of things you haven't stolen." For the first time in my life, I didn't care about making a scene. I didn't care about family pride. I stood there in the middle of that arrivals hall and I felt tall. I wasn't the invisible grandmother anymore. I was the one holding the check. And the look of pure, cold terror on Mark's face was worth more than every penny they had taken. The look on Mark's face was something I'll carry to my grave. He was sputtering like a broken lawnmower. He looked at the legal papers and then at Liam. He sneered, his lip curling in that way that always made me feel small. He said, "You think this changes anything? You're a computer repairman, Liam. You've probably spent your life savings on this one fancy lawyer just to impress my daughter." Chloe stepped up then, tossing her hair. She looked at Liam with such pity. She said, "This is embarrassing, Liam. Truly. You're making a fool of yourself. I'm supposed to have an interview next week with Nexus Grand Holdings. That's a real company. They don't hire people who play games at airports." I saw a little flicker of a smile on Liam's face. It wasn't mean. It was just final. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, sleek black card. He didn't hand it to Chloe. He just held it so they could see the gold emblem. He said, "You're right about one thing, Chloe. Nexus Grand is a very real company. I know that because I spent the last 10 years building it from the ground up." The terminal seemed to go dead silent. Chloe's mouth fell open. She looked at the card and then at the logo on her own tablet. It was the same one. The repairman she had mocked was the founder and CEO of the firm she had been begging for a chance to join. Liam continued in that calm, low voice. He said, "I don't just fix laptops, Mark. My firm handles the infrastructure for the very bank you used to drain Grandma's accounts. That's how we found the transfers so quickly. You were moving money through a system I designed. Mark looked like he'd been hit by a physical blow. He stumbled back a step. Sarah was clutching her silk scarf so hard her knuckles were white. The simple boy they had treated like a servant was the most powerful person in the room. Chloe started to scramble. She tried to change her tone. She said, "Liam, honey, we didn't know. We were just stressed about the wedding. Surely you understand how important family is?" Liam didn't even blink. He looked at her and said, "I understand exactly what family means. It means protection. It means respect. It means not leaving your grandmother at a gate while you fly first class on her dime." Then he looked at his attorney and gave a small nod. He said, "And as for that interview next week? Don't bother showing up, Chloe. I've already informed HR that we aren't looking for anyone with your particular ethics." The power in the room shifted so fast it made my head spin. For years, they had used their success as a club to beat us with. They thought their money made them better people. But in one moment, Liam had pulled the plug on their entire world. They weren't the high achievers anymore. They were just people caught in a very ugly lie. And for the first time, they were looking up at us from the bottom. The weeks that followed the airport confrontation were some of the quietest and yet most turbulent I've ever known. We didn't meet in a living room or over a Sunday roast. We met in a sterile, glass-walled mediation room downtown. Mark and Sarah sat on one side of the long mahogany table. They didn't look like the confident, polished couple I'd known for decades. They looked small. They looked tired. Mark started in with the guilt tripping almost before the lawyers could sit down. He looked at Anna and his voice went all soft and shaky. He said, "Anna, honey, do you really want to do this to your own father? Think of the reputation of this family. If this goes to a public court, I'll never work in this town again." Sarah chimed in, wiping away a stray tear that I'm not entirely sure was real. She said, "We did it all for you girls. We just wanted Chloe to have a beautiful start. Is a wedding really worth destroying your mother's heart over?" It was the same old song. They were trying to make Anna feel like the villain for simply asking for the truth. But Anna didn't flinch. She sat there with Liam's lawyer on one side and me on the other. She looked at her parents and said, "You didn't do this for me, Mom. You didn't even do it for Chloe. You did it for the image in the mirror. You stole from Grandma because you thought she was too old to notice and I was too weak to care." The formal process of reclaiming my funds was a cold, hard business. The mediator went through the accounts one by one. Every dollar that had been borrowed for catering deposits and designer dresses was meticulously documented. Liam's legal team had everything. They had the timestamps. They had the IP addresses. They had the forged signatures that Mark couldn't explain away. I sat at the head of that table and I felt a strange sense of peace. I pulled out a fresh document. It was my new will. I had spent the morning with the attorney making sure everything was crystal clear. I looked at Sarah and Mark. I said, "You've talked a lot about legacy. Well, here is mine." I signed my name at the bottom with a hand that didn't shake one bit. I told them, "The house is being sold. My savings are being moved to a trust that you two can't touch. And when I'm gone, everything I have left goes to Anna and a scholarship fund for students who actually value honesty over status." The silence in the room was heavy. Sarah started to sob then, but for the first time, I didn't reach out to comfort her. I realized that for years, my kindness had been their permission to be cruel. By cutting the financial ties, I was finally setting us all free. We walked out of that room and left them there with their lawyers and their debt. We didn't look back. As the elevator doors closed, I felt the weight of 40 years of keeping up appearances simply fall off my shoulders. We weren't a family held together by blood anymore. We were a family held together by the truth. And that's the only kind of family worth having. The dust has finally settled now. The lawyers have gone home. The shouting has stopped. And for the first time in a very long time, I can hear the birds singing in the morning. I'm sitting on the porch of my new cottage. It's a small place, just the right size for me. Liam and Anna found it for me. It's nestled right in the middle of a garden that smells like lavender and damp earth. My daughter and Mark are still dealing with the mess they made. They had to sell the big house to pay back what they took. Chloe's grand wedding? It never happened. Last I heard, she was working a regular office job, far away from any executive suites. It's a hard lesson for them. But sometimes, life has to take away your mirrors before you can finally see yourself. Anna is doing wonderful. She didn't go back to her quiet editing life. Not entirely. She started a foundation for elder advocacy. She uses her voice now to help other families who are going through what we did. She's no longer the invisible daughter. She's a beacon. Watching her walk with her head held high is the greatest gift I've ever received. And Liam? Well, he's still the same humble man. He comes over on Sundays and helps me weed the flower beds. He still wears those old jeans. You'd never know he could buy and sell half the town. He taught me that true power doesn't need to shout. It just needs to stand its ground. I've had a lot of time to think out here in the garden. People ask me if I hate them. If I hate my own flesh and blood for what they did. And the truth is, I don't. Hate is a heavy stone to carry in your pocket. I've put that stone down. I just feel a quiet sort of sadness for them. They spent so much time chasing the gold on the trophy that they forgot to cherish the people standing right next to them. You see, family isn't just about sharing a last name. It's not about who shares your DNA. It's about who shows up when the lights go out. It's about respect. It's about the truth, even when the truth is expensive. If there's one thing this old grandmother has learned, it's that you can't build a life on a foundation of lies. The truth has a weight to it. It might stay hidden for a season. It might be buried under fancy clothes and expensive trips. But eventually, the rain comes. The soil washes away. And the truth always finds its way to the light. So, take a lesson from my garden. Tend to the roots. Be kind to the quiet ones. And remember that the most valuable things in this world can't be kept in a bank account. They're kept in the heart. And mine? Well, mine is finally full. It's a bittersweet thing, seeing a family tree pruned like that. But sometimes, you have to cut away the rot so the rest of the garden can grow. I want to hear from you now. Have you ever felt like the invisible one in your family? Or have you ever seen karma come back around for someone who thought they were untouchable? Tell me your story in the comments below. I read every single one of them. It's how I spend my quiet mornings now. If you enjoyed this story, go ahead and tap that subscribe button and join our little family here at American Granny Stories. It helps me keep the light on and the stories flowing. And remember, darlings, be careful how you treat the people on your way up. You never know who's holding the ladder. I'll see you in the next story. God bless.